In this second right angle trig video, I'm going to go over some examples. So if you want to pause the video right now and see if you can do this example on your own, now would be the time to do that. So for this first example, we're asked to find all sides and angles of a triangle. So we're given a right angle triangle, and we're told that angle C is 18 degrees, and that side A is 100 meters. Okay, well what else can we find out? Well, we have our SOHCAHTOA definition. So looking at sine of 18, we know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, which in this case is C over B. We know that cosine of 18 is adjacent over hypotenuse, going to be 100, or A over B. And we know that tangent is opposite over adjacent, so that's going to be C divided by 100, or divided by A. So now looking at these three different equations, we have to decide which one we actually want to use. So I'm going to use the latter two equations, the cosine and the tangent equation, because each of them only has one unknown. So we can solve for both B and C. So starting with the cosine equation, if I multiply both sides of the equation by B, the b's on the right-hand side cancel, and so we're left with B times cosine of 18 equals 100. Now, dividing both sides of the equation by cosine of 18, we get that B equals 100 divided by cosine of 18, which is just 105.15. And that looks pretty accurate looking at our drawing, which might not be exactly to scale, but you can see that side B is definitely longer than side A. And it's important to note that the hypotenuse in a right angle triangle will always be the longest side in that triangle. Okay, what about side C? Well, looking at the tangent equation, we can multiply both sides by 100, which gives us that C equals 100 times tangent of 18, and that is just 32.49. So we found side C. Okay, now what about the remaining angle? Well, we know that the sum of the angles of a triangle is 180 degrees. So therefore, we're looking at angle A, we know it's 180 degrees minus each of the other two angles. So angles B and C. And now we know that B is 90 degrees and C is 18 degrees, and so we can solve for A and discover that it is 72 degrees. So therefore, we have found all the remaining sides and angles that we did not already know. Now for the next example, I'm going to have a slightly more difficult problem. So first I'm just going to go over some basic instructions. So if you're given a problem and you're not just given a triangle, say you're given a word problem, the first thing you want to do is draw a picture and label what values you already know. After that, you want to determine what the problem is actually asking. So if it's a word problem, it might be telling you to find a certain length, but given your picture, you need to determine what part of the triangle are you actually trying to solve for. You then want to use what we know to solve for this value. So this could be using sine, cosine, and tangent, using those definitions, using the fact that a triangle has a total of 180 degrees, Pythagorean theorem, things like that. However, there might be some times where you look at a problem and you don't immediately know how to solve for the value you want. So the smart thing to do in this situation is just to solve for as many of the unknowns as you can. So you may not know how to find the particular unknown you want, but you can probably use all these facts or definitions that you know to find some of the other unknowns, and they will help you find the specific value that the problem is asking you to find. Okay, so here we're given a problem. And so we're told that the W.E.B. Du Bois Library is 296 feet tall, that Sarah is standing near the library and she is 5.5 feet tall, and says that the sun rays hit the top of the library at a 40-degree angle before continuing on to hit Sarah. So the question is, how long is Sarah's shadow and how far is she standing from the library? Okay, so the first thing we want to do is draw a picture. Here, I already created our picture, so you can see that we have, on the left-hand side, we have side AB, that's our library. And I labeled it, it's 296 feet tall. And then on the right-hand side, or I guess sort of in the middle, we have our side EC, and that's Sarah. So that's labeled 5.5 feet, because she's 5.5 feet tall. And then the diagonal line we have connecting point B to point C, so that ray, that is our sun rays. So you can see they're coming in and hitting the library at a 40-degree angle before continuing on to hit Sarah and then traveling on until they hit the ground. So if the problem is asking us how long is Sarah's shadow, well, Sarah's shadow in this drawing is side K, or ED. And then how far is she standing from the library? Well, that is asking you to solve for side I, or side AE. So the problem, to summarize it down, is asking you to find K and find I. Okay, so looking at this, you might not know exactly how to find k and I just to begin with. However, there are some other things that we can solve for. Okay, so looking at point B, you know that those three angles that are connected to point B are going to add up to 180 degrees, since they make a straight angle. So therefore, if we're looking at angle ABC, we know that it's going to be 180 minus the other two angles there, which are 40 degrees and 90 degrees. So that tells us that angle is 50 degrees. Okay, so now that we know what that angle is, we can look at the large triangle BAD. So we want to solve for side I and side K. So we know that side AD of the large triangle is I plus K. And so if we want to somehow solve for that, we want to use one of the trig definitions that incorporates the opposite side. So that's going to be either tangent or sine. Well, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And we don't know what the hypotenuse of this triangle is either, since G and H are still unknown. However, we do know what the adjacent side is. We know that the adjacent side of our triangle is 296. So if we take tangent of 50, we know it's going to be opposite over adjacent. Well, opposite is side AD, which is I plus K, and adjacent is 296. Well, multiplying both sides by 296 gives us that I plus K equals 296 times tangent of 50. And that tells us that I plus K is 352.76, rounding to 2 decimal places. So we now know what the base of our large triangle is. Well, is there anything else we can figure out now? I know that the shape BAEC has 4 sides, and therefore the angles add up to 360 degrees. So if I'm looking at BCE, that angle, I know it's going to be 360 minus the remaining 3 angles. So 2 of them are 90 degrees, and then we already solved for the other one, angle ABC, which we know is 50 degrees. So therefore I know that angle BCE is 130 degrees. You can see it labeled there by point C. Now again, if we're looking at point C, we know those 2 angles are going to add up to 180 degrees. So that tells us that angle ECD is going to be 180 minus 130, which is just 50. So again, we now have that angle there is 50 degrees. Okay, so we can now use one of our trig definitions, sine, cosine, or tangent. And similar to the large triangle, for this small triangle, we want to solve for the opposite side, but we already know what the adjacent side is. So it makes sense to use tangent. So tangent of 50 in this case is opposite over adjacent, which is k over 5.5. which gives us that k equals 5.5 times tangent of 50, which is 6.55. Okay, well, we already knew that I plus k equals 352.76, so now we can use the fact that k equals 6.55 to solve for I, and we get that I is 346.2. So now we found both I and k, and we're done.